Let me start out by thanking everyone who posted their questions, making this video possible. Let's begin. Do you believe that a person who was involved in a lot of hits but hasn't been caught is working with the FBI? Not necessarily, especially since years ago, they didn't possess the technology we have today. Murder is a subject any seasoned street guy knows not to discuss because there's no statute of limitations when it comes to things of that nature. Why are the Gambinos controlled by the Sicilians? Let's not forget, the family's founder was a Sicilian, as was his successor, Paul Castellano, and Carlo Gambino's relatives, the Cherry Hill Gambinos, became the family's Sicilian faction. So during the post-Gotti era, the Sicilians just reclaimed a family that was rightfully theirs. Had Cesare Bonventre become the Bonanno boss instead of Joe Messino, you'd think it would be a much more stable situation than it is now. Cesare Bonventre was a powerful captain and part of the Bonanno Sicilian faction who was killed in 1984. But had he lived, he would have been a defendant in the Pizza Connection case, and more than likely, he would have been convicted, in which case, he would have never been the boss. What would happen if a made man was called to jury duty? If he was smart, he'd appear in court and give all the right answers, such as he feels all defendants are innocent, and he'll be dismissed. Do you think failure of certain factions to financially support incarcerated members' families may have led to many flipping? Personally, I feel if a guy uses finances as an excuse to flip, he already had the mindset of flipping and is just using finances as an excuse. Was Michael Ligori also a Gambino associate when you first met him? I would say yes. I first met Michael in a club on Jamaica Avenue in Woodhaven that belonged to Blaze Carrazzo. In fact, it was Blaze that gave him the nickname Mike the Boxer. If you grew up in their area and was still in a life, would you be comfortable doing business with the DeMeo crew? Look, I've said this numerous times. If anyone in that life made you uncomfortable, you should have taken the fire department test. The same answer would apply to the next question. Anybody in the life give you the creeps, or anyone that you thought of that was just inherently bad or evil? We were all bad and acted evil at times. Prior to your prison sentence, would you be considered an associate? Prior to me going to prison, yes. Following your release, have you ever had a job application denied without an explanation? Not immediately after my release, but that started when I went to Savannah, Georgia, and more recently. Here's an email question. If you've seen bad qualities in Patty Delarosso, why didn't you mention it to the administration? Because unlike Patty, if you were my friend, I didn't backstab you. As far as his bad qualities, there comes a time when everyone's true colors come to surface. I remember reading that DeSantis couldn't get along with Carmine Avellino because he didn't want his crew doing anything that brings FBI attention. What was DeSantis doing or wanted to do? I have no idea what Mikey was doing back then. We were in different crews. According to Johnny Sideburns, things got so bad between Mikey and Carmine that Mikey wrote some kind of resignation letter. As Sideburns put it, a fucking embarrassment. This is not a Fortune 500 company that you can resign from. In the movie A Bronx Tale, when the biker gang trashed the bar of a made guy and then the biker gang was severely punished along with their bikes, in real life, would the mob guys in the bar be very worried about a retaliation? I guess you could ask the Bonannos who disrespected Joe C. at his father-in-law's wake on Long Island. If a member is on federal paper and a close relative of his dies, are other members allowed to attend the wake? Why not? The member who's on paper either gets permission from his probation officer or he goes to the wake on off hours. It's been said that mafia neighborhoods were a safe place. Would legitimate local business owners agree? And now that social clubs are no longer visible, is that still the case? I would have to say that years ago, when social clubs dominated Italian neighborhoods, things were much safer. I don't know how local business owners felt, but the neighborhoods were safe. In your opinion, were there guys that got straightened out solely because they were wild and had a quality that seemed useful? If they weren't made, they would not have any control of them and they would have been killed. I don't know if that last part was a question. But a lot of guys who were considered wild or had that type of reputation were straightened out, in some cases to calm them down. And in a few instances, there were guys who were considered too wild, even for the mob. If a made guy had a sister or a daughter that was attracted to another made guy or associate, could you stop that from happening? First of all, daughters are off limits, unless you approve a relationship. And you could request someone not to date your sister, but how many guys can tell their sister what to do or who to date? Were there any truly charitable mobsters when you were involved, like members who gave to charity but weren't trying to make a buck at the same time? There were a lot of guys who were charitable, like Cyril Perron, the West Side captain, who on every holiday would send gift baskets to the nuns at the church. How did the Lucchese's divide up the tables at Rayo's? To start with, it was one table. The middle round table belongs to the Lucchese family, and it was divided up by the captains, who would get different dates throughout the year so that the captain and his crew could have access to the table. Did you try to put every associate you worked with on record? Or were there certain associates you would still work with, but did not want to put on record with you for one reason or another? I did not put every guy on record with me. The more people you have around you, the more headaches you invite. There were certain guys I purposely didn't put on record. For instance, one guy who shall remain anonymous, definitely a capable guy and made for the life. I was at his house one day and watched him interact with his daughters. I left there and couldn't do that to him. Initially, I wanted to push to have him straightened out. I even told my captain about him and was told to start bringing him around. But I'd rather see him get to enjoy his daughters. Buzz, I did you a favor, my friend. And that's not his nickname, but one only a few of us called him. Here's another email question. They say John Gotti was an instigator with the Colombo War. Had he not gone to prison in 1990 and remained on the street, do you think the Colombos would have tried to hit him? It's definitely possible. He already had two other families trying to take him out. Let me quickly remind everyone to please hit the like button, also of the super thanks icon found down beneath, for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for videos like this. And now for the last question. How tough was the transition from mob life to the life you live now? I wouldn't describe it as a smooth transition, but more of a gradual one. You have to be mentally strong, especially going from one life and lifestyle that's extremely different than the other. One was very fast paced, so I had to transition to a laid back kind of life. My life now has more meaning and is by far more peaceful. I've learned more from my enemies than they could ever imagine. And still to this day, I never correct an enemy when they're making a mistake. I'll end with this very true saying. Even in the darkest days, the sun will come out again.